Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Beshears, thank you so much for coming on. I know you reached out to me last week. You wanted to do a little bit of an interview, and I'm grateful to have somebody from my neck of the woods, from Lynn Haven, because we've been covering a lot of Panama City stuff lately. I know we had Jeff Schneider on. We actually just had Jesse on, even though his race isn't up. But we wanted to have the mayor on to kind of clear the air on some things. But let's talk a little bit about your race. You're running for seat 3.
Correct.
And your opponent is Jamie Warrick, and he's been sitting up on that seat for the past 4 years.
That's correct.
Yeah, and so kind of run me through why you decided to run, the stances that you're running on, and then we'll kind of just jump into the conversation wherever it seems, necessary.
Yeah, sounds great. So to start with, thanks for having me here. I really appreciate the opportunity to chat with you. It looks like everything I've seen about the 850 podcast has been great news. Good reviews on it.
Thank you.
But I've been involved in Lynn Haven politics for, about 4 or 5 years now, retired about that far back. I've lived in Lynn Haven all my life. But I've grown frustrated that the commission seems to be unable to move forward. They're not making decisions timely. And part of that is they're spending so much time looking in the background at the decisions that have been made in the past and trying to rehash them that they need to move forward. The big things for me are stormwater. Everybody talks about stormwater in Lynn Haven. We have an advanced wastewater treatment facility that we have to upgrade in the very near future. That's going to be a very large expenditure no matter what we do. And we're quite a bit in debt in the city. And so I really want to address how we manage that debt, how we got there, and how hopefully we can get out of it at some point. Those are the key things for me as far as running. There's obviously plenty of other things that need to be addressed within the city, but as far as my platform or my thoughts of moving forward, it's the stormwater, the sewer system, and the debt are the big 3 for me.
Well, let's go a little bit into let's hit on the debt first.
Okay.
So, obviously, how much in debt are we right now?
So right now, and I'm going to talk approximate numbers. So when I throw these numbers out, they'll be approximate. I'm not saying down to the dollar, but I'm going to get really close. So right now, budgeted for 2025, at the end of this year, looks like we're going to be about $30 million in debt at the end of the year. Of that, somewhere between 18 to 19 million of it is storm related. The rest of it is debt that pretty much was inherited from the previous administration that we've done a pretty good job paying off. At one point, at the height of our debt after Michael, we were about $60 million in debt.
The previous administration, how long were they? Because I know you're referring to the previous mayor.
Right. So, you hear a lot about Margo Anderson, and I don't know Margo, and all of the trials and everything that were back there, they're behind us at this point, and I don't have any opinion one way or the other. They were settled in court or pleaded or whatever, but I don't have any issues with that. And like I said, I don't really know Margo, but when she took over in 2015 from Mayor Kelly, the city was in about $7.2 million in debt, about $7.2 million. When she was removed from office in 2020, we were about $32 million in debt.
So wait, hold on. So I thought she served 2 terms.
No, she started in 2015. She was reelected, if you think about it, but she was removed from office during her second term, I believe is correct.
So within 5 years, she took it from $7 million to
32, about 32.
32 million. And now, do you think that derived from Hurricane Michael?
No, that does not even include the storm damage. That does not include the storm debt at all. That is just debt from new bonds that were issued while she was during her tenure as mayor. So the Hurricane Michael debt, if you pile that on top of it, that's how you go from 34 to $60 million in debt. But the debt that was accumulated, and it wasn't all bad. I mean, it's debt, and I don't want to see debt at all. We should have waited to do some work until we had the money in our pocket. But she did pave a lot of roads. There were a lot of roads paved, but they also kind of used it as a slush fund sometimes. I know in one commission meeting, I saw where one of the commissioners had said, well, at least we have the infrastructure sales tax fund to help pay for the splash pads. So, those kind of things bother me. And you know how government is. If you give them tax money, they're going to spend it. Um,
Well, they feel like if they don't spend it, then they're not going to get approved for it later on when you apply for it. And
yeah,
there's I, I like to look at it that way because both of us being in the military, we've seen it happen. You know, I mean, you give a platoon of guys a couple cases of ammunition to go out and shoot, 15,000 rounds in a day. And then if you come back with rounds, extra rounds, they're like, well, you're not going to get that much next time, even if you add more soldiers onto your thing. So that's the reason why it was always the joke when I was in the military, where it was like, hey, make sure that you shoot all of the ammo before you come back because we won't get approved. But that's the same concept that the government seems to use on a lot of these different like avenues of money.
yeah, and I don't know. I worked a little bit of co-op work years and years ago for the Air Force here out at Tyndall, and I saw the same thing. At the end of the year, they hadn't budget money left. They threw it at everything they could to spend it because they knew they wouldn't get it back the next year. I can't say that's the same for Lynn Haven or how they address it. There's always a lot of things that the city needs to upgrade or spend money on, infrastructure for certain. So there's always places to use that money. It's a matter of balancing that with what the citizens need and what the citizens want,
Yeah.
and how much money we're taking from the citizens. And that's difficult. Nobody wants to pay more taxes.
So you're saying that we went from $60 million in debt from the previous administration to who is sitting there now to $30 million in
Right.
debt. So we paid off $30 million in debt in the course of how many years?
Well, from 2020 to 2025, so 5 years.
That's pretty freaking amazing.
They did. Now, we had some windfalls during that time. We had part of the things coming back from Biden administration in early 2020, I think, was I don't remember the name of the program, but they gave money back to the cities and to the states somewhat. And so we got, I want to say about $4 million out of that, something like that, that helped pay some of that debt down. But they've been working really hard. I've talked with all of the department heads, I think, except for maybe one in Lynn Haven in the past couple of months. And they're all really buckled down on the budget. They've told me that if they exceed a line item, they can't do it. They have to pull it out of somewhere else in their budget. They can't just increase their budget because they have a need that they see. So they're really tightened down there. It is one thing we're going to have to do when we really start looking at the budget, though, line item, line by line, make sure we're spending the money right. Then we can decide what we need to do to keep paying that debt down. I really hope in the future, since Michael, we're going to have about $18 to $19 million of debt related to Hurricane Michael at the end of this. And that's a lot of debt. And I don't like debt, but we will have all new buildings. We're going to have, we've got a new city hall, and did we go over the top on it? Yeah, we went over the top on it. Should have never spent that much money on it.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, hold on. How much was it?
So I think if my memory's correct, we spent $14 million.
I think that's perfect for
on
what
that.
we got.
On that.
The reason why, and so I had this conversation with. I don't remember who I had this conversation with. You had to go back through my episodes, man. I've talked to a lot of people. Was it Doc? Well, so what's interesting about the Lynn Haven City Hall is that you have all of these departments, including the police department, that are all under one roof. I don't believe that you could have built separate buildings for all of those different departments, how a lot of cities do it, for that kind of money.
Right.
I think not. Listen, we're going to disagree on some things. I disagree with you on that one. I think that they actually did spend the money wisely with that. Now, if you want to start getting into the beautification part, did you need palm trees? Did you need this? Did you need that? Did you need what is it the peanut gallery talks about now? Something about the kitchen. Oh, the kitchen was a big deal.
Yes.
And it's like, but the thing about it is like, with that kind of money, anybody who's ever worked in construction a day in their life that knows about like the money behind getting something that actually $14 million for that. I mean, I think it was a good deal. I mean, I really do.
Well,
So-
I mean, we've got a facility that's going to serve us for decades and decades. We're not going to have, and that's where I was headed. We're not going to have to spend money building a new city hall or repairing or maintenance and upkeep too bad on an old building that we would have had to do before Michael.
Vicki explained the building also. in a way to where it can be used as a shelter for hurricanes now for city employees and things of that nature too, to have a place to where it's not going to be like they're not going to have another Hurricane Michael issue where
Where it's falling down around them while they're trying to do emergency services.
And then you have everything there to be self sufficient. When you start looking into the kitchen, when you start looking into there's actually some modern like upgrades in technology in that building that are going to allow that place to be a headquarters. We're in the panhandle of Florida. We're always going to have hurricanes.
Oh, yeah.
We're always going to have them. And to have a place where emergency personnel, city employees, and things like that to be ready to operate on the fly, again, I'm sorry. I think that they were right on the money. In fact, when it was originally told to me, I think it was like $15 million, $16 million that they were saying. And I'm like, that's a good deal. Like, that's just the way that I look at it. But
and I may be mistaken on the 14. It might have been 17. I can refer. I've got the notes. I can refer back to them. The thing that I hear from citizens is that the kitchen and the weight room for the police is unnecessary. But like you said, at the end of the day, we have a great
the waiting room for the police department is the size of this studio. It's not that big.
Right.
But yeah, I get what you're saying.
I remember I was there when Michael came through. I went for a week or so without a hot meal. I know, the kitchen, will it ever be used? Kind of hope it's never used. I kind of hope we never go through another Michael, but if we do, it will certainly withstand the winds and give the city employees, when Michael came through, they were huddled up and the building was falling down around them, and they couldn't take care of the citizens because they had to take care of themselves first, and the building wasn't up to standards for that, and it is now.
Yeah.
So we've got the city hall, and we also have a new sports center out at our sports park, an excellent one. We have the senior center's been revamped, the parks have been reworked, public works has been redone. We've got all of that stuff is done. So we're going to be at a maintenance point with all of this, where we're just maintaining and no longer building new buildings, and hopefully that will translate to giving us some leeway to pay the debt down better, because we won't be spending it on other infrastructure for city buildings. Now, there's plenty of other infrastructure to deal with, of course, but as far as buildings are concerned, we're pretty set.
We also have people that are sitting up on the commission that aren't worried about their legacy to build things that are kind of like unnecessary and out of the budget either.
Yeah, I don't like that legacy word. I really do not. I don't want to leave a legacy. Yeah, I want to leave people better than they are today. I want Lynn Haven to succeed, but putting my name on something, not interested. It's just not my thing.
Well, it's not about you.
It's got to serve the citizens. It's got to serve the city. And the city hall, a good example would be, there was a convention center, I think, out here at the beach that they put in a few years ago, and there was a lot of discussion how expensive it was and how bad it was to spend all that money. You don't hear a word about it today. It's here. It's serving its purpose. It's not up for discussion. And we have to understand that what we spend today impacts way out in the future, and that's what we're doing. And you've got a point. That's what City Hall is going to do. It's going to serve us way out into the future as the city grows, and we're going to grow. We're going to continue to grow.
So kind of talking about that debt, I know that they just got out according to Jesse, they got out of that $4 million fiasco with the local contractor who's done a lot of work for the city. I think over $100 million over his time doing business with the city. And so I know that they're super excited about getting out of that debt. It appears though that with that $4 million of the city getting out of, because it was going to be somewhere close to, I think it was like a little over $3 million that particular contractor would have made off of the money that he loaned to the city. It seems like there's a little animosity there on that. It seems like there's a little bit of anger on that. That's the reason why he's come out and he's kind of like spoken out against the city, and now he's suing the city and all this. For somebody that sits there and says that they're all about the city and all about the spending, as soon as you got paid off on your loan, then you decided that you were going to sue the city. So there's this drama aspect that's there. sitting up on the commission, seeing something like that that's going on, or is there any ideas that you have to kind of help mitigate these this drama that goes on behind? Because we talked a little bit,
Hmm.
off camera before we started about this misinformation. Well, I just gave you the legitimate factual information of what's going on, which is you get paid off on a loan because you loaned the city $4 million, and you were going to be making over $3 million on that over the course of how many years? 30
I think it
years.
was 30 years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's 30 years. You're going to make over $3 million on that. The city decides, hey, we don't want to pay that kind of interest, so we're going to go ahead and pay you off.
Hmm.
He gets paid off. He gets upset. Now all of a sudden he wants to do an audit on the finances for the city. Obviously, the city's finances are perfectly fine because they just paid you off. What is your freaking problem? But as a commissioner that is going to be sitting up there, how are you going to mitigate things like that for the future?
Well, it's to me, it's a little bit of a conflict of interest for your contractor to lend you money. He's basically paying you or letting you be paid with the money that you're
He
paying
made.
him. It's kind of like take it out of my pocket, I'll put it in yours, and give it right back to me. Lawsuits. The city's a pretty good sized city. Lynn Haven's a small city, but you're going to always have lawsuits. It's just a fact of life. It's just the society we're in today. The society says we're gonna have some lawsuits. As far as a commissioner trying to head some of that off, some of it's going to be checks and balances. I mean, anytime you're entering into contracts with anybody, you've got to make sure that it's done fairly and then administrated correctly. A lot of what we saw back through that era was that, and it wasn't just the 17th Street ditch project and that loan. It was the same with the infrastructure surtax fund that was passed in 2016. That money, which is somewhere between, at that point, probably $1.75–2 million a year, they immediately borrowed money against future income on that surtax. So instead of waiting to collect the surtax, they spent it ahead of time. We also just paid that loan off this past year. So it's not just the 17th Street ditch. They also paid that surtax bond off. So now we've got a chance that we can have some money coming in from that and hopefully use it for some other capital projects. And if they're going to use it to subsidize our stormwater fund, which seems to be the current consensus, we need to be real careful of that because the surtax fund is used with matching. If we pave roads with it, the state usually matches 100%. So if we use $500,000 of that dollars out of that fund to pay stormwater, we lose $500,000 of matching also. So we've got to be careful of that. But I'm off your subject. Back to the loan and how to handle things coming before us like that. We just have to know the facts. There's a huge amount of misinformation out there. And that's one thing that I would like to, for you're in the information business, is how do we get the real information out there? At the commission meetings, people stand up and they make.
Well, actually, I've asked this to several people that have been on. In fact, some of the listeners are probably going to be like, "Dang, Ron, how many times are you going to ask this question?" But I'm going to ask the question until I get everybody's opinion on it. I've asked this to Sam. I've asked it to Jamie Warrick. Jamie Warrick thought it was a good idea. Sam thought it was a good idea, and I'm not trying to put words in their mouth. I mean, they can speak for themselves. Jesse, I asked him about it. I feel like he's in this position where he really can't answer. He's like, I've never really thought about it, but I'm going to ask you this question. So back when everything went down with Ricky Ramy, and by the way, I've known Ricky since I was, dude, little kid. He went to First Baptist Church with me and my family. Do I know Ricky? I don't really know Ricky, know him, but like I know him good enough. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yep.
not saying that I'd go sleep in a foxhole and fight the enemy with him because again, I don't know him like that, but I do know. There's just some things that I knew about his character that I just don't believe are so that's are out there. But anyway, regardless of that, I took my son to my son's first public meeting, and so we went and saw the commission sit up there, and my son I was trying to teach him about he's not in school yet, so saying the Pledge of Allegiance, bowing your head, when you pray and stuff like that. So I thought a meeting the first meeting that I took him to, the first goddamn 30, 45 minutes of the freaking meeting is people just getting up there and just getting irate. That was the same meeting the nerd that was in front of me, stuck up the double fingers.
I remember that meeting.
And I'm sitting there. I was sitting right behind him. I had my son with me.
Yeah.
And listen, I'm a veteran, so it's nothing that he probably hasn't heard or seen before. But it's one of those things where he sees daddy do that in the presence of buddies, joking around. But seeing the seriousness that goes behind this and listen, I get it, the freedom of speech aspect, whatever, you can beat that horse if that's what you want. But I got my kid with me, and I'm trying to teach him about law and order of the land and how things are decided on in our community. And when he sees something like this, that is not how meetings should be conducted. And you got people that get up there and they want to spend this 3 minutes, but I think we have glorified chaos through Lynn Haven meetings. When people see that they're going to be on a camera, when they see that they're going to be thrown up on Facebook, YouTube, and even on the city website or wherever, but when people see that, they're like, oh, well, if I speak, I'm going to be up there. And then Bernie Thompson's going to make a clip of it. And then I'm going to be famous. And people are going to see that I have something to say. And it's like, yes, you have the right to speak. You have the freedom of speech. You don't have the right nor the freedom for it to be broadcasted. So the way that I looked at it, and I went through the charter myself, and I, I've, like I said, I've brought it up to several members of the commission, including the mayor, and I said, why don't you try to find a way to set up public commentary on its own night, separate from the meeting, that allows the commissioners to actually get down to business of things that they are going to be voting on. And this would be really, really good for the community in a couple aspects. One, that public commentary night that the citizens come to, it's not mandatory for a sitting commissioner to be there. But you're going to see who cares about the community, so you'll be able to see what commissioner actually wants to listen. Then you'll know who you need to vote out. But on those nights, that not only gives the citizen a way to communicate their frustration on things to the commission, but it also gives more time for the commission to be able to respond. Now, with that meeting, it's not broadcasted. Don't put it on your Facebook page. Don't put it out there for why. If you're a citizen of Lynn Haven that cares about the community and there's something important that you want to have to say, or there's something important that you want to hear, you will go to that meeting. And so have it on where there could be no problem. You have that meeting at 6:00, it goes to 7. It's a 2-hour meeting. If we didn't get to you in public commentary, then you get head of the line next meeting. Or, still do it the way that it's supposed to be done, which is the commissioners reach out to the person anyway.
Right.
Do you think you'd be okay with doing a separate night for public commentary?
So that's an interesting question. So a lot involved there, so I'm going to probably talk too long here. One thing is that the public commentary section, you're going to really need to leave that in there during a regular commission meeting, because it is an opportunity for citizens to come up and ask the commission questions and put things in front of them. I'll give you a specific example from my history. Back in, 2014 to 2015, somewhere back in there, I was cited for harboring livestock at my house. I had chickens, and this predates the chicken ordinance in Lynn Haven. So, and I had researched the codes prior to getting chickens and knew there was nothing in the codes to keep me from having chickens. So I was cited, and over a series of months of going up and working with the commission, we eventually got a ordinance passed where you could keep chickens in Lynn Haven legally. And specifically addressed it. But had I not been able to go up and talk to everybody at once, in front of the public also, because you want the public to know this stuff's going on, then it would not have happened to the degree that it did. And it took several steps, and it was a little frustrating as a citizen, because You talk to the city manager, and they say, well, you need to talk to the lawyer. You talk to the city lawyer. They say, we can't do anything unless the commission tells me to. So then you have to go to the commission meeting. And it just drug on. And those are the aggravating things there. But you need to have some form of public commentary. It needs to have some decorum to it. There needs to be accurate information given, and not just accusations slung out there. It's been harmful for the citizens of Lynn Haven, for the workers in Lynn Haven, for the city employees, and all of us as a whole, to have that misinformation repeated over and over and over again, because perception.
What misinformation are you referring to specifically?
Well,
just why I know that there's plenty of it
there's
out there.
There's plenty of it out there. So you hear time and time again, get up and somebody says there's fraud in Lynn Haven. There's fraud going on in Lynn Haven. There's massive fraud in Lynn Haven. Lynn Haven's probably one of the most investigated cities in this part of Florida anyway, if not in Florida. Yeah. And if there was fraud out there, they would have found it. My answer, my thing with that is, if you truly believe there's fraud going on in Lynn Haven, take it to the state attorney and let them file charges. But don't get up there every meeting and accuse everybody of fraud. And as a mayor or the person leading the meeting, you just need to shut it down. And if it's an attack on individuals, which I've seen, that needs to be shut down too. And there's rules and guidelines to do that, to keep public commentary respectful and allow it to perform and do what it's supposed to do. My thought process is to expand public commentary to 2 points in a meeting, one at the beginning and one at the end, because if a citizen gets up and talks, and in our current way they do public commentary, the citizens will talk and the mayor and the commissioners can respond during their reports. But that doesn't give the citizen a chance to come back and further their point. So I would kind of like to have a rebuff, more or less, at the end of the meeting. But it's funny that you should mention having a separate meeting, because in the last forum that I was at, the League of Women Voters Forum, which unfortunately the audio was not very good on that, I said outright that I think that once a month or once every 2 months, maybe just once a quarter, we need to have a Saturday town hall or workshop that we invite the citizens to and the commissioners to. We don't have to have city employees because it's a Saturday, it's off time. But you hear a lot of complaints that, well, we're having meetings when I can't go. I'm at work. I'm here. I'm there. Having something on Saturday in a more open setting where it's a back and forth, you can actually discuss stuff. Because in the Sunshine Law, the commissioners don't get to talk to each other. They can't, and that's a big hang up. It's a big stumbling block.
So Sunshine Law does not say they can't talk to one another.
True.
And I'm not trying to correct you, but sorry. This is one of those things that pisses me off so bad, because I see people, they talk and they just they don't know what they're talking about. You can talk outside, and you don't have to have somebody. You just have to have the ethical, decision making to not talk about anything that's going to be voted on.
Right.
You can still talk. And then it's like sometimes people, because back, it was years ago, the Panama City Beach Commission, a couple members got caught having lunch after the meeting, and go, I caught you guys, all y'all are in violation of sunshine. And it's like, it's not violent. First of all, you're going to have to prove that, and the only way you can prove that it's a violation of sunshine is if they were talking about something that has something to do with they were voting on or any city business.
Right.
And so people can talk. I hate that about, because obviously I'm kind of, Sam is is a really good friend of mine. And I know before, Sam got elected, him and Jamie were pretty decent friends.
Right.
And then it was like, once he got elected, and he was like, I can't be caught talking to Jamie. I don't text Jamie. I don't call Jamie. I don't do anything. I don't want this to come back on me. And I was like, as long as you guys don't talk about it, he's like, it doesn't matter, because perception is reality.
Yeah, perception and appearance.
And so as soon as I talked to him, I understand that aspect. I'm just sick and tired of people going around saying that there's a sunshine law violation. When somebody says that they talk, it's like, as long as they didn't talk about anything that had anything to do with the city, it don't matter.
Right. That's the misinformation piece.
Exactly.
That is the misinformation piece. And we can talk, commissioners can talk to each other, but you can't talk city business, really. Yep. I go to Beef O'Brady's a lot. I see Pat a lot. And I know going forward after I'm elected, we probably won't talk as much, just simply for that reason, for appearance reasons.
Yeah, because somebody's going to see you talking to him there.
Right. And
Yeah.
and I talk a lot. And and part of my issue with this is going to be that it's going to be really hard for me to segregate talking about city business because I'm not going to be a part-time commissioner. You've got right now everybody on the commission, with the exception of Judy Vandergriff, who is rolling off, who decided not to run, is part-time. They've got a full-time job outside of the commission, and that's what we see when they get up there is they've not spent as much time as maybe they should have spent on city business before the meetings. I'll talk with everybody, but it's going to be, since I'm going to be so immersed, it will be difficult for me to segregate talking city business out of my conversations, although I can do it, and I will, because I'll still talk to everybody. And we can also, it's my understanding, and they may correct me of this in the future when I get in there, but if we have something to bring forward, we can send an email to the city manager and it can be distributed to all the commissioners so they can see that information ahead of time, because that's available via public records request. But I would like to get back to, it would be nice to be able to sit down with the citizens of Lynn Haven in a less formal atmosphere than a commission meeting and talk through their thoughts and where they're at, and get their input. And that's what we really, really need. We really need their input. We don't need the input from a select group on Facebook. We don't need a input from a select group on any of those kind of social platforms, because you're only getting a very small subset of people that may or may not represent the whole entirety of Lynn Haven, and they're going to always say they do. That's one thing you see across the board. When somebody gets up there, they represent all the citizens they feel like, and they don't. They represent themselves and a few of their own that may be in the same echo chamber as they are. But we have to work with real data, with real information, and with the real input of the citizens. That's one thing that as I've gone through this campaign and started knocking on doors, I've kind of decided that one day a week after I'm in there, I'm going to still go out and knock on doors every week and talk to citizens, meet them where they're at. I go to the parks, I go to all the activities, because that's where you meet your citizens at. You meet them where they're at. If you want them to come see you at lunchtime, you get what we see with the lunches with the commissioners or coffee with the commissioners. You get 1 or 2, 3, maybe 4 people at those meetings, and it's usually the same ones. It's not as beneficial as meeting your citizens out there where they're at. And I'm in Lynn Haven. I play in Lynn Haven. I spend almost all my time in Lynn Haven. So I interact with people a lot, and that's where I'm going to get my information from, is from the overall overarching people in the city, not just a few that come to the meetings and want to use the public commentary as an open mic.
Yeah. Understand. So we hit on the debt. We hit on a little bit of misinformation. Did you want to hit on anything else when it came to misinformation that you think that should be out there?
Well, we've talked about debt. One of the misinformations I've heard several times stated is that the city has no funds, that we're almost bankrupt, that it won't take much to push us over edge to bankruptcy. That's pure BS.
Sounds like the same.
It's pure misinformation. We've got probably 3 to 6 months of funding that if everything shut down tomorrow, we could stay a going concern in the city for that length of time. Michael, we learned a lot coming out of this side of Michael. Yeah. And so not only have they paid the debt down, we've also accumulated some funds. If something were to go sideways, we do have that funding available. The debt, I do want to go back to the debt. And I hate to keep harping on debt, but I'm very financially conservative. The debt's a big deal for me. Mm-hmm. I hate paying interest. I hate for the city to spend millions of dollars paying interest when we don't have to. But the debt, so we're going to be $18 to $19 million in storm-related debt when we're finished getting all the refunds and all the grants and all the insurance money from everybody. We're still going to be $18, $19 million in debt. And that's a lot of debt to carry. But like I said, we've got new buildings. But the point of that is we know how we got to that debt. It wasn't that anything was being hidden. The commission approved the building. They approved the city hall that everybody calls the Taj Mahal. They approved it. They approved the change orders. They approved the task orders. That information was out there and available. There's places that we didn't get money back that we thought we were going to get, so it plays into that overall number, is what you'll hear repeated as well. We were told we were going to be $5 million in debt from storm, and now we're $19 million in debt. But there's some valid reasons for that. And like I said, there were change orders done. Michael White employed a public adjuster for insurance. We didn't recover all our insurance. We left about $6 million on the table with insurance that we did not recover. The portable buildings that they used for offices for a while were $1.3 million for those that weren't covered. The debris hauling and everything was quite a bit. I mean, we only got 75% of that back because that's how FEMA reimbursed, was 75 for that, and the city had to pony up the other 25%. So there's a lot of different things that play into that. I think that covers most of it. Of course, I didn't even mention the $5 million that was stolen that we didn't get a penny of back through all of the misappropriation or whatever under Michael White. So
we lost $5 million that we never recovered out of any of that.
We never recovered, and we will never recover it.
Where did it go?
I don't know. Did it go to whoever the contractors were? I don't know. But all those numbers play into the debt, into that 18 or $19 million in debt. And that number, you have to, I like to segregate the storm debt because we're going to be $30 million in debt at the end of this fiscal year. And of that, 18 million is storm-related debt. So consider that we were $34 million, now it was either 34, maybe it's $32 million in debt in 2020 without the storm-related debt. Now, at the end of 2025, we're going to be about $12 million in debt for that portion of the debt. So we went from large debt there down to down to where we're going to be, which is 12 million, which is a phenomenal debt decrease. And people talk a lot about our city manager's salary.
Oh, I love it when people talk about the salary. And then I don't understand this thing when people talk about salaries. Because one of the candidates that I've had on who I really enjoyed the conversation, I really enjoyed how much research and data that came to the table, was Ed Young. Now he's running for Panama City. Mm-hmm. But he did complain a lot about salaries. And one of the craziest things about the salary aspect is the salary that you obtain has to do with the responsibility that comes along with what goes on. So, if you're sitting there and you're saying, what is Vicki's 150 grand?
So it's 164, 166. I think it's 166.
So, all right, how much? Okay, we'll go ahead. We'll put this into perspective. How much money does Vicki manage?
Well, the budget last year was $60 million around. This year it's $52 million.
Project, right?
Project manager.
Project manager. That's in the ballpark.
Yeah.
They would make that kind of money on managing the same amount of money.
Yeah.
So it's not, first of all, it's not a freaking argument. It's literally like that talking point is weak. The fact that somebody would even bring that up is you're just looking for things at that point. Like it's not relevant to any conversation, because if you look at any financial firm, if you look at any management in any industry that you go into, if they're managing that kind of money, their salary is that freaking high, because you oversee that kind of money. The responsibility matches the salary. So, and I know I'm beating that horse, but dude, I'm sick and freaking tired of hearing about it. And to be honest with you, after going to your freaking meetings and then on top of that, having to deal with the PR, and I got to listen to Karens that come up and want to talk about stuff that just is irrelevant. Like it literally has nothing to do with anything. And I got to manage this, and I got to put a smile on my face. And I got to pretend like I give a damn what you got to say. That's low.
Yeah.
I would charge more. So, and by the way, I have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there you go. So, the whole argument about the salary range. One is she's still the second lowest paid city manager in the county. Also, she's not just been being a city manager. She's been managing the rebuild of Lynn Haven, and Lynn Haven recovered faster than any other municipality in the county. We were the second hardest hit in the county.
Getting out of debt faster than any
and
other
we're
city.
pulling out of debt. Matter of fact, I looked at debt numbers for Bay County today, and unless I misread the numbers, their budget at the end of this fiscal year, they're going to be $100 million in debt from Hurricane Michael, and they've paid $0 against that bond they took out for that, if I'm reading it correctly. Now, that's one document that I pulled up online, which was the Bay County budget. Zero.
Let me say that about Vicki real quick, because she came on the show. And, when people want to talk about that salary, I'm going to hit on it again.
Oh, I'm going to talk about some too.
Let me tell you, when she came on the show, her phone went off nonstop the entire time. It was different people, because I saw it. And when her day ends, her day doesn't end, because when she goes home,
it's 24/7.
It's still going on. So that salary to me is, I think it's right where it needs to be.
Yeah.
I really do.
So just as a point of reference, and this can be fact checked. Actually, you can fact check any of the things I'm telling you, or the people out here listening to the podcast can fact check me. But there was a W-2 of Michael White posted online for his last term, I believe, that he was in office, where he filed, or what the city W-2'd him, was $174,000. And that was in 2017 or 2018. Vicki's been there a long time. She knows the city. She knows the laws. I've seen all the state proposals or state bills that she has to look at. She has to know all those regulations, and she has to balance the needs of the city against the funds that she's got to work with. Her job is to run the city. The commission's job is not to run the city. The commission's job is to give the city guidance and tell them which direction we want them to go, not to run the city's day-to-day operations. And that's the city manager's job. And I think she's doing quite frankly, a phenomenal job doing it. Much better job than I could do doing it. And I would not. I'm like you. I'm retired. I don't want that kind of headaches. I don't want that. But at the end of the day, she's paid what I think is a fair rate. And the other thing you hear is, well, she gets overtime. She got overtime once, and it shouldn't have happened. A salaried person, you really don't get overtime. You take comp time. I was salaried for years. I was salaried for years and years.
Salary doesn't mean that you can't get paid overtime. We got people that are GSs that get overtime when they go over in their salary. That whole thing about her working on a holiday and getting a little bit of extra pay. I'm the type of person where I look at a salary as a salary like you. I'm not going to ask for that money.
Right.
But at the same time, when you're coming home day in and day out and you're constantly taking phone calls or whatever, and now on a holiday, I got to put in extra time, a little bit of extra compensation, and I get it. What was it? She only made like $100.
No, it was probably more than that. But,
was it?
But the thing to me on that is, as a salaried employee, and I was salaried for years and years, is I was on 24/7. I was on call. My telephone's on the whiteboards in all our control rooms for the industry, the plants I worked in, so they could call me if something went sideways on them. But the way to handle that, in my opinion anyway, is don't do overtime, do bonuses. At the end of the year, do a review and say, okay, you went above and beyond right here, and we can compensate you for that. That's my take on that, is let's address it in the employee evaluation point. And that way, it's the commission's decision and not the individual's decision for those bonuses, because it's difficult. Your HR director reports to the city manager, so the HR director really can't manage overtime well for that, and the city manager can't ask for it, and she's a contract employee. So to me, if you want to handle it with a bonus structure, with set out some straight up things. Say, if you've kept injuries of city employees have been below this particular mark all year, if you've reached certain milestones, you can set those milestones. They can be set, and it can incentivize an employee. And I'm not just talking about Vicki Gainer, right? It can incentivize any city manager in the future on the direction we want the city to go, instead of just letting it go. And right now, quite frankly, it's what I see is, I see the city employees and the city manager pushing the commission to move forward instead of the commission pushing the city manager and employees to move forward. So that's not how it ought to be. This commission should be leading, not being forced to
Yeah,
lead.
it's a suggestion. It's not direction.
Right.
Yeah, so I understand that.
So let me ask you a question. I was not in the service. My father was, but that was years and years and years ago. So as far as organizational structure and how things work in the service, and I only bring this up because my opponent spent many years in the service, and how does that relate to building teamwork as a team? I just want to make sure that we work as a team. I don't want us to be I don't want the commission to be adversarial with one another, and I see that kind of playing out right now. Is when you become adversarial with each other, you automatically don't work well together, and you don't build a team, and you don't move the team forward. So this is a roundabout way of asking: is the military structure set up such and becomes so ingrained in you that you're in a position of taking orders from one person, giving orders to another, and you don't depart from that? Do you work well? And believe me, I love our service members, and I would never say anything against them. I appreciate everything they've done. But as far as running a city with a commission, a group of 5 people, you're making a decision and helping them make a decision and move forward as part of a team. And you can't say, this is do it my way or not. You've got to work as a team. Is it hard to do coming from a military command standpoint?
Man, that's a very good question, and it changes based on what you did in the military. I think, I could speak from a combat job perspective on that, and it still changes depending on where. I started out when I went in the military. I was on what they call the line, which is very strict, and it is very, orders go from here to here to here to here, and it goes down this chain, and then you have this chain of command,
Right.
and then it's like that. But then once you start getting into a little bit more specialized units or specialized jobs, because then you like move into like recon platoons and stuff like that, then it's more of a team thing. But from my personal experience in the military, it is very much so. Orders come down the chain, and you don't really, you don't have a say. I mean, you got to do what you're being told based on facts and data that's been pulled from social media. The people that are in Jamie's corner right now, waving the pitchforks and fire, they're so much farther from how Jamie looks at things. It's ridiculous.
Right.
And so, but as far as giving orders and taking orders, do you feel like that's something that he's kind of done, or?
So here's an example of an actual example, and you do, going back to Sam first and me or anybody up there on the commission at this point, I would hope that we would be able to articulate why we're making a certain decision each time we make it. If we had to, a good example would be we recently had a community come out for a development order they were against. This is over across Bailey Bridge, and this is very recent, the last commission meeting, as a matter of fact. They came out, and the developer has met all the requirements of the current land use for the piece of property. And there's really no way that the city can say, no, you can't develop that. Is it the right thing to do? We don't think so. Is it overbuilt for that? I mean, too many units in a certain area? Yes, it is. But that said, it meets the requirements as they were written, and we can't stop it. I hate that for the citizens that live around that. I know I went to high school with the lady that lives just south of it, and it's a horrible circumstance for them, horrible. But we can't stop it. That's something that 20 years ago, that property was annexed into Lynn Haven and immediately changed to a high-density land use. And at that point, the cast was set. It was set. That's what was going to happen or could happen. And we have to, as a commission, take into account what can happen 20 years from now that we don't put somebody else in that position. Now, circling back to an example. So, and this is going to go back to the Ricky Ramy things that went on with Chief Ramy over his hit and run. So during that time period, it's my understanding there were 3 lawyers that were engaged to give the city commission advice and counsel on how to proceed. And so they proceeded down the road with that advice, and they had a meeting and to vote on whether to retain Ricky or fire him. And the vote was 4-1. Commissioner Warrick voted to terminate him, and the other 4 said, no, we're going to follow the lawyer's advice, and we're going to forge on this way, and we'll make a decision a little later. Well, actually, not a little later. That was the decision at that point. They'd already heard everything. The only information they didn't have was whether it was going to result in a conviction, and if it did, they would have to take further steps. But, so it was 4-1. Then, at the very next commission meeting, Commissioner Warrick came back and wanted to censure the city manager for doing the will of the commission instead of his will, which was fire Ricky Ramy. And the commission said, no, we don't want to fire him, and we're not going to censure the city manager for not firing him. So that was, he wasn't satisfied there. He came back at the next commission meeting after that and wanted to institute a city clerk position that reported to the commission instead of reporting to the city manager, as a way to hold the city manager more accountable to the commission than she already is, which, you know, quite frankly, she's 100% accountable to the commission. And each and every one of them can go talk to her about that. So he tried 2 different times after being told the commission wanted to go a certain way. He tried a second time, then a third time to overcome the commission's will, which to me puts him in an adversarial position with the rest of the commission on this, that he wouldn't let it go. It shows a lack of respect between them and him, and between him to them. He also recently wanted to hold, and they did hold, a workshop on the stormwater assessment fees, on how they may be increased and how they're going to be tiered in the structure. And when he proposed that meeting, he proposed that just him and Sam be involved in that meeting. And that was, to me, a point of disrespect to the other commissioners and the mayor at that point. It's problematic for me. And I think that at the end of the day, we have to work as a team, and we have to respect each other and go forward with each other. And if we're at odds, if we don't like each other, if we're fighting each other the whole time, it's not good for the city. It's not good for us. It's not good for anybody. And we have to work as a team. We have to have, my job was 100% teamwork. I didn't have any direct reports. As a project manager, I had people that were working for me, but I didn't write their paycheck. So I had to build consensus with the groups to move forward and find the right path to go forward. And that's where one of my strengths is, building consensus. And I've always thought that was very important to do. I'm not one, a good example would be holding someone accountable versus holding someone to blame are 2 different things in my book. But if I'm working with somebody and they make a mistake, they're doing something, they're trying to get something done, and their heart's in the right place, and they want to get it done correctly, and they make a mistake, it's a mistake. Understand that. Let's don't repeat that mistake in the future, but let's don't hold your feet to the fire and fire you or get rid of you because you made a mistake because you're doing something. Yeah. Let's work with them. Let's face it, if everybody you work with is afraid you're going to discipline them if they make a mistake, they're going to do less, they're going to communicate less, and they're not going to be as willing to go forward with you. So you've got to work with them. If your whole thing is assigning guilt, you don't need to do that. You've got to work with these people and help move them forward, help them achieve their goals and our goals. And if you're not, I don't know what you're doing.
So a couple things with that, you know, in Jamie's defense, because we just had Jesse on, and he did say that the city attorney did not relay a lot of information to Jamie like he did with everybody else. I think that's the reason why we don't see Doug Obos up there anymore. In fact, I'm pretty dang.
Flesh that out for me a little bit. I'm not following this.
So
When you say
when
he didn't,
I-
he being who? Go ahead.
So the way that they wanted to handle the Ricky Ramy situation, when I brought this up to Jesse the other day, and I'm not putting words in Jesse's mouth. You can go back, you can
No,
listen
that's
to
fine.
it, and so can the viewers. But the way that it was explained is Jesse said that he found out through meetings that he had with Jamie in front of the city attorney, so they didn't violate sunshine law. Is that he found out that there was a lot of information that was never relayed around to Jamie. I'm having that correct, which I'm pretty sure I do.
That's bad if that's the case.
That is extremely bad. And that's why Jesse, was saying every single time Jamie was sending an email to Vicki, asking for all this stuff and calling people. Ricky has an attorney that's just sitting there accumulating all of these emails and building a case. And so, and Jesse was like, my whole thing was I was trying to keep the city of Lynn Haven out of a lawsuit. And so, and we were advised by the city attorneys on how we needed to handle this, but some of that was not relayed to Jamie. So I assume, based on this conversation that was had on our podcast, that that because of that not getting around to him is the reason why I handled a lot of that. Now, Jamie's also a big boy and he's a grown ass man. So I mean, he made decisions to. And listen, you're talking about a little bit about the military aspect and accountability versus blame. I think Jamie has sat up there long enough to where he's gone under the scrutiny of past issues when it comes to debt. Then on top of the drama that has surrounded him is so funny because the people that are around him that are cheering for him right now are wanting to burn him alive, 2 years ago.
I actually came out in his defense on one of those sites at some point.
Yeah. And so, and I think what happened is that he wanted to see some sort of accountability for what had happened. And you're right, it didn't happen the way that he wanted it. And because in the military, those types of things that go on, it's like you're out of here, like or it's you see UCMJ action and all that. And so now again, this comes back down to adapting to life now, and you're not in the military anymore, and people don't operate like the military, and thank God they don't, because not everything that the military does and how they handle discipline is not what you want in the civilian world.
Right.
I've had to learn that just working for local contracting companies here, where I'm sitting there going, this doesn't make any sense how you're handling this. This needs to be handled a different way. And people are like, and then I have people literally dudes that have served in the military that are looking at me like, dude, why are you so fanatical? And it's like, dude, I came from infantry.
Yeah.
And you're going to be low crawling through a ditch until midnight if you say something that even sounds like it could be disrespectful.
Right.
And so if you're coming from that atmosphere and then you're coming into politics and then you're saying the chief of police went out and got in his truck at 4:00 in the morning at a bar and hit a car, and you're going, this dude is still employed? But again, you have to get out of that mindset of being in the military and understand where you're at, understand your audience, understand. And I think it is very hard for Jamie. And again, I'm not in his defense because I don't think that he handled the situation properly. He knows that. I've had multiple conversations with him about it. But this is something that I do know. It's something that he believed in so strongly that he would put this election on the line for it.
Believe me, Jamie's an honorable man. I mean, and he's doing what he feels is right. There's nobody on the commission, nobody working on the commission that's not up there that's going to do what they don't think is right. Because let's face it, $15,000 a year is not enough money to get up there and do what the commissioners do day in and day out. If that's what they were after was money. It's not.
Yeah.
I have no doubts that every one of them up there is doing what they feel is right in their heart, Jamie included. He's what I hear when I'm knocking on doors is, well, he stands up for us. He stands up for the people. And that's admirable. But what has that resulted in is what I have to look at too. Is he being effective in that position? And I don't think he is, just because he's not playing as a team. But you don't have to agree with your team all the time. I've related this to people that my wife and I, raising our kids, if there was a decision to be made between us and we did not agree on it, we got together and we hashed through things, and we may still not agree at the end of the day, but then we moved forward with one answer or one direction with our children to make sure that they didn't see that opposition and become insecure because of it.
Well, I think what you're talking about is at what point do you finally throw down the sword and say, okay, this fight's not worth it?
Yeah.
And I think that's when you're talking about military guys, especially dudes that were 20-year career dudes, when he left, being a master sergeant, he was definitely in one of those roles where he's not, and just based on my experience by being in the military, once you get up that high in the enlisted ranks, and Kendall, you can kind of correct me if you think I'm wrong, but when you get that high up, you're not used to hearing a lot of no's. Yeah, normally,
Right.
normally it's for somebody that's higher up, but you're not used to. And normally, smart officers do listen to the enlisted guys a lot when it comes to. And so he's used to being. And I'm not trying to put words in his mouth, and I'm not trying to put his career, out there. But he from my experience in the military, at his rank and his status that he had in the military, he was used to being kind of like that consultant to higher ups. And then he was used to looking at people that were in his chain of command and saying, go do this. And there's no like, oh, well, I think that, and it's just like, you don't get paid to think,
be hard.
And coming to this. And again, accountability is huge in the military, man. And so he's sitting there going, I don't understand how things happen. And he did that through a military career. And now he's doing it with his, political career, and just trying to, and I think he spends more time, this is just my own opinion, I think that he probably spends more time asking himself, why can't everybody see why I'm fighting for this?
Yeah.
And I think everybody hits that point. You've probably hit it several times in your life. I know that I'm only 34, and I hit it quite frequently. It's a daily thing with me.
Right.
And I kind of have to come back to reality on that. But I don't think that just watching as a citizen of Lynn Haven, I don't believe that Jamie is getting up there and he believes people should do what he says or things don't go. But I do believe that he's saying, I'm not going to let this rest because I don't feel like it's right ethically.
Yeah, and I can understand that.
Yeah.
I can understand
That's
that.
a principle thing, I think.
Certainly. I mean, you get into the black and white of things, and it's this way or it's that way, and you see it one way, and that's the way it ought to be. It's hard to let that go and and just go on. Hard to let it go and move forward.
Oh, yeah.
And I understand that, and all I can say about going all the way back to how the whole thing transpired with Ricky Ramy is, I would like to say I know what I would have done. I have my own personal opinion of the method I would have proceeded. I wasn't there. I didn't have the information coming in to me real time like they did. So I can't really say exactly what I would have done.
There's a lot of sketchy things that went on with that when it came down to it. Because I've heard some things here and there that didn't come from Jamie, didn't come from Sam, and then came from friends of mine who work in law enforcement. And I've heard some different stories that are out there. What do I believe? I don't know, but I can only imagine what it's like being a commissioner up there with all the different types of information that's been given out. And I think it was one of those things where it's like, don't always trust the sources that are around you. I think that he didn't want to trust the city attorney.
He being
Jamie. I don't think he wanted to trust the city attorney. I think he really did honestly believe and still believes that he was given false information on how to handle something. And then he did his own research and he went out and he found out that that's what he wanted to do. Personally, no, and I know I'm giving a lot of my opinion out there. Let's play the hypothetical. What would Ron Keel have done? If I was there and the city attorney was telling me, "Hey, move on, don't talk about this," because it sets us up for a lawsuit. I'm the type of person. I grew up. My mom and dad, they talk about it all the time. So, Ron, don't touch the stove, and I would sit there and stare at him while I do it. And I think there's plenty of people when I was running for office that know that that's kind of like my personality. And so I probably would have fought it as well. But I think I would have probably hit a time where I'm like, the only thing that this is doing is causing division in the community. And I don't want to be a part of that.
Right.
And so I think that's kind of like that should have been kind of the thing. And Jamie has an opportunity to come on and talk about it as well, and I hope he does.
Right.
To talk about the reason why he did do the things that he did,
Mm-hmm.
and we can finally get some answers on that because we're not getting answers.
Yeah, and we're speculating. I hate speculating.
Yeah,
I like
yeah.
to base it really on the facts. I'll give you this example from my history. Years ago, I was lead lay in a church, and I had been appointed to a school board position by the person that was over the school board, basically the manager, let's say, of the school board. I was appointed to be in that position, and it got contentious between the school board leader and the leader of the church, the main pastor of the church. And there were accusations made against the pastor and this and that. Got very contentious. I was the senior warden of the church, and we called an emergency meeting to talk and brought the pastor in. And my entire intention in that meeting going in was to ask him to take 6 weeks off, because in that position we couldn't say you have to take the time off, but was to ask for him to take 6 weeks off while we worked through the problems and got to the answer and came to a logical and fair conclusion. He resigned going into that meeting, so we didn't go that route, but that's neither here nor there. That was my intention in that meeting. Kind of parallels what I see here. Then you step further down. I get accused right now of being a yes man to Vicki and Ricky and
I've heard
Jesse. That's a big deal for a certain group of people.
You said before you came on, it was like, I'm having Johnnie Beshears on, and literally somebody said that. They're like, oh yeah, the guy that they got to run against Jamie, so they don't have to worry about Jamie fighting back anymore.
Right. So I hear that a lot. I'm very aware.
You don't strike me as that type of person.
I'm certainly not.
But
so two things. So I'm not a yes man. I'm going to make somebody tell me what's going on, and they won't. An example, if I feel like I'm not getting the right financial information from the city manager, I'll go to the city finance director. If I'm not happy with what I get from there, the commission will be hearing it. As a whole, will be hearing it. I believe in taking care of things at the lowest level possible before you escalate, but sometimes escalation is necessary. But I will do what's necessary there. But I do get faulted because people think I'm a yes man. Is where I was going with this school board position. So remember, the leader of the school board appointed me to my position on the school board. And one of the audience members got up during a school board meeting and asked all the members of the school board to pledge unconditional support for the leader of the school, of the school.
Ooh, nope.
And they went down the line, and when it got to me, everybody until me had pledged unconditional support. And all I could say is, nobody gets my unconditional support ever. My wife doesn't get my unconditional support. There's only been one person that walked the earth that had my unconditional support, and he's been gone for a couple thousand years.
Jesus.
Yeah. So it just doesn't happen. For the good or for the bad, I'm on the infrastructure sales tax committee or infrastructure surtax committee in Lynn Haven. I'm vice chair of that committee. Jamie's the one that recommended me for that appointment, and I'm running against Jamie. Now, is that a yes guy? I don't think so. Am I going to work with the city administration and the people on the commission? Certainly I'm going to work with them. But you can believe if something's not right, I'm going to make sure that it's taken care of, or that the best I can do is to try to sway the rest of the commission to do the correct thing.
Yeah.
I'm not a yes man. And people that have appointed me or elected me in the past thinking that they had a shoe in on me, that they've a lot of times found out that's not the case, unfortunately for them. Is I'm going to base my information on what's right, what's true, and I'm going to make the best decisions I can for the city and for the citizens and for the city employees to move forward.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. Let's, so I've, this is kind of like I think it's a famous question by now. Kendall, I think it's a famous question. The famous question is, I think I've done this question. You know what I'm about to say. Yeah. So I'm going to give you this scenario. When I was in the Army, I was in the training room one day. We were getting ready to go out on what they call a field problem. We're going to be gone for a couple weeks. And I remember 2 NCOs that were just at each other's throats. They were sitting there arguing. NCO, non-commissioned officer.
Right.
So you got 2 of these guys. And they hate each other. They've hated each other ever since the one came from another unit, and they just don't get along. Actually, one was an 82nd guy, and I was in the 101st. So we have this rivalry that's there, so we just hate each other anyway. But they're sitting there, and they're freaking going back at each other about why the other person is an idiot, and the other person's stupid, and all this. And I had a first sergeant, he came out of his office and he heard this bickering, and he's just like, he tells them both to get down on their face, and so they're sitting there and they're doing push-ups, and he has them both stand up, and he looks at both of them and he says, I want you to give me 5 negative traits about him, and I want you to give me 5 positives. And so he's like, he kind of like looked at him and he's like, First Sergeant? And like he's at parade rest, and he's like, First Sergeant, what? Like, it's what? And then he's like, no, you don't have anything. And he looks over at the other one and says, 5 negatives, 5 positives. If you can't give me 5 negatives and 5 positives about him, you don't know who that person is. You can't do that. You're flawed in your thinking and your logic. And so the way that I've kind of brought this around in the election side is 5 positives that the city is doing that you want to see keep going, and 5 negatives that you want to see out of here.
That's a good question. I probably should have watched a bunch more of your podcasts, so I've been ready for this.
Hey, just to be clear, there is only one person that has passed that so far. Jonathan Hayes, we had him on. He's a city manager for Panama City, and he rattled it off like candy bars. He was perfect at it. Yep. Everybody else has kind of been like, well, it's really easy for me to tell you what I don't want to be negative, but yeah, do your best to try to.
Okay. I will start with negatives because I like to end on positives.
That's good. Hey, that sounds good.
So negative wise, the city is still, even though it's moving fast, it's moving slow. We're still in a lot of debt. We still have some infrastructure issues. Communication's poor sometimes. So a negative to me is the lack of communication with the city, that the city has engaged with citizens. One, I guess if I stay just with communication, like the city website is hard to navigate. The city app is hard to navigate. The city calendar is incomplete. There's just things that the citizens, I think, go to look for and they cannot find. One.
Well, and so keep in mind with the negatives, if you could give a solution that you think that would to go along with it. I'm not trying to make it more complicated, but it's one of those
that's fine.
For every problem that you give,
have we got another couple hours? As far as a solution to that is, we need to rework the website. There needs to be some and this is my opinion. I'm not an IT expert. I'm not a web designer, but from a citizen standpoint, I like to open a page and for what I'm looking for to be right there, one click and I'm done. A good example, first thing I would like to see would be for the live stream button that's on the web page to actually open a live stream. Right now, you click it and it lists the old commission meetings, and it may be one you want to watch, maybe one you don't want to watch, but it's never the live stream. So that's the first very easy thing to do, is to see that. The packets for the commission meetings, They could make those a little more accessible. Right now, I've been on the website enough to know I know how to get to them, but you'd have to know the tree basically to get there. There's just some things like that that could be made a lot simpler. The calendar, they are doing a better job now than they were previously, but there's still times when I want to see a meeting that I want to go to, and you click the day on the calendar and it's not there. We need somebody to be in charge of keeping that calendar up to date all the time. I was on the website today looking for water and sewer rates, and I clicked the link and it says page not found.
You don't think that this stuff's intentional?
No,
though.
I do not think it's intentional at all.
Yeah.
Not intentional at all. It's just somebody needs to be addressing that stuff. And yeah, you're going to have missing page links and stuff, but ones that you think would be pretty important, which I would think water and sewer rates, which are a sticking point with a lot of people, is a pretty important click.
Yeah.
I would think it would be a little more readily available.
Cracking.
So, those are some of the small things that I could see maybe having somebody that was more in tune with looking at that city website day to day. Last thing on the website I would like to see is the city posts a lot of things on Facebook for informational purposes. Believe me, I'm big on input from the citizens, but when they post something that says we're going to do concerts in the park on Friday, there's no reason to allow comments on that. It's an informational piece. Don't put it up there and let everybody say, "Oh, well, we needed to be spending that money here instead of there."
Yeah.
Turn the comments off. Don't open that can of worms, for lack of better statement.
Yeah, if somebody wants to go and so that's the thing, right? Because the argument right now, because we've blocked several people from our page, and then of course I delete comments. If you're going to start, and the main reason why, so it's like you're going to come on, I'm going to put your video up, and then somebody's going to come in there, and if they come in and they're like, "Hey, I don't like his stance on XYZ," that comment stays.
Right.
They get on there and they say Johnnie Beshears is a POS that worked for this employer, and they just start to I delete the comment because it's like that has nothing to do with what we talk about. It's not censorship, by the way. You can say whatever you want. You have the freedom of speech. If you want to go on your own page and you want to make a comment and you want to share what I had and you want to talk about it on your page, by all means go do that, but you're not doing it on my page.
Right.
And that's kind of a similar thing, and I agree with you on that. I think that's
okay, so second item then is we do have some buildings that need some work. I mean, our main buildings are in great shape. There's a storage building that sits out behind the senior center that the siding's rotting off the bottom of. We have things just stored in the yard out there, out at the animal shelter. There's stuff stored in the yard that should have probably been thrown away. We need to address that kind of thing. We need to quit accumulating things that we may never use again. One of the little funny things you see is breaking news. Somebody used a piece of wood that they've been storing for 10 years in their shed finally. It's that kind of thing. We need to do a little better job of policing our city properties to make sure that they're not cluttered with things we'll never use or things that are in the way, things that'll blow around in a hurricane per se. Following on that, right now there's a push to look at the RV ordinances in the city, how we're going to allow RVs in the front yards, houses. And that started initially with talking about Connex containers, or for people that may not know what a Connex is, it's a travel trailer, a short travel trailer, long travel trailer, a mini pod, something like that. One thing they're looking at doing, you can't really have those. We've got 2 Connex containers out by the senior center also that have city stuff in them. If we're going to hold the citizens to a bar, we need to meet that bar ourselves as a city. So that would be the second thing, is to clean up some of these properties and stuff. Let's see, what else? The third thing, thing.
I think you're around 4 or 5 now.
Okay,
actually.
all right.
Yeah, no, you hit quite a few because they were separate issues with the documents and the live stream.
So positives for the city: we've recovered from debt pretty well. We're still in a lot of debt, but we've recovered from the debt pretty well. They've done a good job of paying it down.
It's not talked about enough.
No. Well, in my day-to-day work, talking with people, going to their doors, meeting them at the parks and stuff, when I say we're 30 million in debt, they say, we had no idea of that. People, they don't know. It's not talked about.
Yeah.
It's not discussed. Lack of communication. But they have done a good job paying it down some.
I don't think it's a lack of communication. I think it is a drowning out of good information that's being thrown out there by false information.
I agree with that. I agree with you there. So they're doing a good job on debt. We're doing a good job in our parks. You talk to people in Lynn Haven, they love our parks, and that's an excellent thing. They love them. I've been to all of them. That's a big plus for Lynn Haven, a big draw. That's kind of what makes Lynn Haven Lynn Haven.
Family uses them every day.
We get out there and we play in the parks. We meet each other. We get to know each other in the parks. That's a big part of Lynn Haven. That gives us a small town feel. Another positive is our police department's accredited, which is a big deal.
We went down by another 14%.
Right? Yeah, yeah. You've been talking to somebody. So, yeah, our crime rate's even lower than it was previously, and we were already one of the safest cities in the state. So we're doing very good on that bar also. Our sports center, we're drawing families from across Bay County for baseball, for all our other sports. We've got a fantastic sports center out there, baseball fields, softball fields, pickleball courts. Who would have known 4 years ago that we would have a shortage of pickleball courts?
Oh, you're not joking.
And we do. That's, you talk to Justin in sports, and that's the main complaint. We don't have enough pickleball courts. I think he's tired of talking about.
They're building those things everywhere now.
He's tired of talking about pickleball. But that's the kind of success you want. You want people to want what you're providing, and that's what we are. We're providing, Lynn Haven's providing that for them.
And let me hit on that real quick, because a lot of people, they'll sit there and they'll talk about it. And one of the things that you'll get hit on is like, oh, you're talking about pickleball courts, you're talking about sports complexes. This has cost the city so much money, and we're still building it, blah, blah. What happens when somebody goes and plays pickleball? What happens when somebody goes to a baseball game in Lynn Haven that came from across the county? What happens?
Mm-hmm.
Afterwards, you go out to dinner. And where are you going to go to dinner? You're going to go to dinner in Lynn Haven. You're going to spend money in Lynn Haven. That's going to keep business thriving in Lynn Haven. And then you got people like me, where my parents wanted to move to Lynn Haven my entire life growing up. They just never really got in the position where they could make something like that happen. And now me and my family live in Lynn Haven, because that was like my goal growing up, was if I can live in Lynn Haven. And it has not been a mistake at all. Everything that you're saying, Rails to Trails.
Right.
I use Rails to Trails every single day.
Yep.
My family uses the playground right there by City Hall every single day. My wife takes the kids there. We utilize everything that Lynn Haven has to offer. And on top of that, before I moved to Lynn Haven, I lived in Panama City. And we lived one block over from Frankfurt Avenue. I was kind of low income back then, and I was gone a lot.
Right.
And so, but when I finally was able to save up and we were able to purchase our home in Lynn Haven, my wife would have, messaged me and been like, oh, I'm going to take the kids to Oakland Terrace Park. It's like, I don't want my kids going to Oakland Terrace Park. At the time, things are a lot better in Panama City now than what they were then. But it was like, I didn't trust my wife to take the kids where I can't be there to protect them. To go into those types of places. Living in Lynn Haven never crosses my mind.
Right.
I can't, when she takes the kids right there by City Hall, there's a police department that's right there. And dude, if you spend enough time in Lynn Haven, you can't spend a lot of time there without passing by a police car.
That's right. Well,
safe.
Even at the art in the park that they had a couple of weeks ago, I was there for that, and one of the policemen walked over and monitored the park for, 30, 40 minutes as they got started to make sure everything was going well. Not that it was being organized well, but that there was no conflicts going on, that everybody was safe. And that's the kind of thing you get across Lynn Haven. So yeah, the parks are a big deal. That makes Lynn Haven Lynn Haven. Our fire department we've got a very good rating for fire response times. So we get a break on our homeowners insurance because of our fire department. Not to say that we're not going to need some new trucks pretty soon for it, but our response times are good for the fire department. We have a new fire chief, and he's making some pretty great strides in reorganizing the fire department itself so that we're set up for more success in the future. So they're doing well with the fire department. So, those are one of the things when you look at the where money's spent, a lot of times a lot of the money's spent on safety and welfare of the citizens, and Lynn Haven's spending money there on their fire department, in their police department, for that welfare and enjoyment of the citizens. There is a reason people move to Lynn Haven. There's a cost for that, and we need to be cognizant of that cost. But there is a reason that people come to Lynn Haven and want to live in Lynn Haven instead of wanting to live somewhere else in Bay County. So that's an important aspect of Lynn Haven, is safety, welfare, and just the pure enjoyment of living in Lynn Haven. Let's see, what else? How many is that? Is that 2?
I think you hit more. I think you said parks, police, fire.
Yeah, so that's 3.
And
Bunny
debt.
said debt.
You said debt.
Debt.
One more.
Well, we've got our infrastructure. Oh, I know what it was. The big thing. We've not even talked about stormwater today.
Oh, Lord.
We haven't even talked about stormwater. Now, believe me, if you live in a house and it rains and water gets in your house, you don't care what happened across on the other side of the city. Stormwater is a problem for you. But overall, Lynn Haven has done a lot with stormwater in the last few years. We've not spent the money on capital that we would like to spend to put new projects in to lessen some of the stormwater impacts, but we no longer get the every year houses flood. I remember several years back that houses along Colorado Avenue, if we got a few inches of rain, they flooded. You drive by down Colorado and there'd be carpets out on the road where they got wet. That doesn't happen anymore. They've done a lot with stormwater. It's not solved. It will never be solved because we're at sea level basically, and we're not going to build walls like New Orleans. We don't want to do that.
I'm going to tell you that story over there in Pine Forest. Pine Forest. I personally know somebody who lives over there. When I was walking the neighborhood with Sam, I walked that neighborhood right after it had rained. Oh my God. And so there was a guy, and I know him personally now. He had a pump, and he was pumping water off of his front doorstep, basically, out into the road. The water would go through that hose out onto the road, and it would go down, and then it would go into everybody else's yards because the construction company that had paved on that road just paved on top of the road. So the road is higher than the yards. And it caused, like, a lot of the stormwater damage, or a lot of the stormwater problems are man-made in Lynn Haven.
There's no doubt. I mean, I've lived in Lynn Haven all my life. And I can tell you, when I was a kid in elementary school, junior high, I loved for it to rain. We'd get the skim boards out and skim across the front yard. We had water sitting in there. But all the roads were dirt. They were all dirt. The houses were built. The roads were dirt, and they did just like you said. They came through, laid the road bed on top of the dirt, paved them, and now your roads are higher than the yards are. So it pushes the water off into the yards.
What's the fix?
There's not an easy fix. The only real fix is ditches. Ditches are underground pipes to carry it away, because you can't raise the land up where the houses are, because then it just pushes the water to the houses. I can tell you this, at my parents' house at 907 Arkansas, after Michael, we tore the driveway up. Well, before Michael, when it rained, the water would run down and pool up in the driveway, and eventually, if it was enough rain, it would pile up all the way up against the house on the driveway. And that's because the driveway was lower than the road. So it's what we did after Michael. We actually tore the driveway out, raise the driveway up, and report it, so that's not a problem at that location anymore. But that's just a singular thing, and it's not cheap to do. There's not an easy solution other than ditches and
But when you talk about
trenches.
ditches, one of the things that I saw when I walked with Sam was west side of 77. When you start to get back there in the neighborhoods closer to Mowat,
Oh, yeah, over on Acme Lane, close to Mowat.
yeah, you get over there. I mean, a little bit further. Like if Mowat's here, over in this area, right
Oh,
before
yeah,
you
yeah.
hit like the Sally
You're
Mae
talking
area.
yeah.
And so
You're talking about Northridge area.
there was
I
a
think.
lot of ditches that were over there that didn't have that piping to lead stuff away. And what happens when you have just sitting water? You have that sitting water, and then it's mosquito infestation and all that stuff. And there's a lot of ditches that weren't done correctly.
Yeah.
I think they're fixing a lot of that.
Yeah, they're digging a lot of ditches. We spent the city has spent quite a bit of time maintaining ditches. We still, a lot of times the citizens themselves will get out and work on the ditches a little bit, which is helpful for certain. If you've got a problem in front of your house, if you can solve it, great. If not, well, the city needs to come out and solve it anyway. But if you can do something to at least abate it a little bit to keep water out of your house, that's great. But yeah, the ditches, a lot of them have moved a little bit. Maybe the pipes are lower or the ditches themselves have filled in. But they do have you can go on the website and look at the maps. There's a link for maps you can look at. And one of the maps shows the ditches that they've dug out and the status of those. Same way with the roads. That's another thing they're doing that's good, although people will not necessarily agree because there's still potholes. That they have software and devices on some of their city trucks now as they drive across the roads. It actually takes the profile of the road and rates the condition of the road. So they've got an automatic map of the worst roads in the city of which ones to prioritize for paving. So that's a plus too.
Yeah, absolutely.
So stormwater is a thing. I would like to talk about one more thing if we've got time.
Yeah, go right on ahead.
And that's our advanced wastewater treatment facility.
Okay.
It's a major expense that the city's going to be facing in the next decade at the latest. We're already working on it. City's already working on it. But the current consensus is that we will take the current sewage treatment plant that sits at the end of 5th Street at A.L. Kensaw Park and do away with that sewage treatment plant and put a pumping station there and pump our sewage up to Edwards Road up toward North Bay County, close to where the rural electric co-op is. And that's a good option. It gets our sewage treatment plant off of the bay, so it gets that vulnerability away from it, but it's not free. I mean, as you can imagine, they're talking about running lines from A.L. Kensaw basically up to Edwards Road, which is a lot of force main, a lot of pumping, a lot of things to do. Even to do that, the cost is going to be, current estimates are $20 to $30 million to do it, that version. If we do our own plant expansion, it's going to be worse than that. So we're facing the possibility of additional debt due to that if we don't start managing our money right now and thinking about how we're going to pay for this advanced wastewater treatment facility. And by advanced wastewater treatment, I'm talking sewer. It's the sewer plant. We've got to take care of that, and we don't have a choice. It's state mandated. If your facility is at 70% of capacity, the state dictates that you have to start planning your expansion for your treatment center. So it's not something that we can just say, oh, we're not going to do that, or we can't say, oh, we're not going to grow. We're just going to sit here and do nothing. It has to be done. So it's an expense that we've got to figure out how we're going to pay for. There's some grants out there, but in today's political atmosphere, grants are not a given anymore. There was a time when lots of grants were out there. There's not as many grants out there right now, and I don't foresee that getting better in the near term.
There are a lot of people that are against grants, that don't want to utilize grants. We've had several candidates on that have run for city of Panama City that are kind of like, I think that it's kind of, I think that, if you don't absolutely 100% need it, then you shouldn't accept it. But you want to utilize as much grant money as you possibly can get your hands on, right?
I do. There's grants aren't completely free money. There's always guidelines and always requirements about the grant that add some additional burdens on the city. The main thing that I hear people complain about grants is that, well, that's my tax money anyway. That you're just using it. You're just taking tax money from somewhere else that I'm having to pay. Well, and that's true a lot of times. Now there are some grants out there that don't come from taxpayer funds, but for those that are like a state grant or federal grant, yeah, your tax is paid for that. But you have a choice. If you don't want to take the grant,
It's just going to go
don't take
somewhere
it.
else.
Somebody else is going to
Yeah.
get it. It's not going to save money for you. It's just going to mean that your money didn't come back to the community. It went to somebody else's community. So as far as grants, I'm all for let's get all the grants we can, as long as managing that grant money doesn't add such a burden to the city that they just can't do it. I'll give you an example. The Porter Park in Lynn Haven, the boat ramps and the Wayside Park there, we got grant money for that. And I don't remember who the funding agency was, but one of the requirements, as I looked at this, I do a lot of fishing. Believe me, I build custom fishing rods. I do a lot of different stuff. But I use Porter Park a lot. I launch my boat there a lot. And it's a very nice ramp. So a year or probably 2 years ago at this point, I went down to Port St. Joe and launched my boat down there to go scalloping. At their boat ramp, it's $20 to launch your boat at their ramp if you don't live in Gulf County, which, it's their ramp. They paid money to do it, and that's fair enough. But we can't charge anything at the ramp in Lynn Haven because we built those ramps with a grant, and part of that grant is it's open to everybody to use. So there are some boundaries that you can't cross when you accept grants. There's certain things that happen there that might not happen otherwise, or that you can't do, or that you could do otherwise. So there are some things with that. That does bring up one more positive for Lynn Haven. When I talk to people, and I've been talking, it's campaign season. I've been talking to a lot of people, going to a lot of events, and I'll always go to events. But usually in the past, when I've gone to events, I've gone and just enjoyed the event. Now when I go, I enjoy the event, but also talk to a lot of people. And since I'm running for office, I ask them, are they Lynn Haven residents? And I would say probably 50% of the people that I ask that question at our events are not Lynn Haven residents. What does that tell you? That tells you they like what Lynn Haven's doing. We are doing a fantastic job of bringing Bay County to Lynn Haven.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll let you do a closing statement if you want to talk about, what you're wanting to see, and then when voting is, and
Sure.
all of that.
So I probably said it at the beginning. I'm a lifelong resident of Lynn Haven. I did move out for 15 years to Panama City when I first got married, but as soon as I could get back and raise my kids here, we did. So I want to see Lynn Haven move forward. I want to see us face the challenges that are ahead of us and quit looking at the sandbox that's behind us. Quit trying to re-answer the questions we've already answered. Quit trying to address the things we've already addressed. Let's learn from those mistakes, learn from those issues. Don't repeat them, but let's move forward. The worst thing somebody can do, in my opinion, is to not make a decision. I'm that person. I want to make a decision and move us forward. If I make a wrong decision, or if the commission makes a wrong decision, or the city makes a wrong decision, we can go back and address it and correct it, change course, but we've made the decision. Just because we didn't make it doesn't mean we're still not going to make it 6 months down the road if we do make it, if we wait that long. So my thing is, we need to make decisions and we need to move forward. There's a frustration level in the citizens and in the city employees that we're not making any progress in those areas because of that. And that's what I want to see us do, move forward. So as I say that, we just have to be cognizant that there's things we're facing that we need to take care of, and those are the pressing things we need to do. The real problems that are facing us, not some made-up scenarios. We need to face the real problems or challenges that are ahead of us. Now, as you come out to vote, the reason I'm running is I think I'm capable of that. I told somebody a while back, if I did not think I could do a better job than my opponent right now, I would not be running. It's just that simple. I'm not seeking a life in the public spotlight in public office, but I think it's needed right now, and that's why I'm running, because I want us to move forward. Elections are early voting is April 14th. The easy way to remember that, it's the day before your taxes are due. Not necessarily a good benchmark, but it's a memorable one.
Yeah.
So you can vote for a week before the general election, and that starts April 14th. The general election is April 22nd, which is the Tuesday after Easter. So those are your benchmarks, and it's really important. We don't suspect we will see a lot of voter turnout here, so it's very important for people to get out and vote.
especially for the people that are going to vote for me. but it's very important that you get out and lend your voice to the city by voting. And I say vote for me tongue in cheek. I want your vote, but even if you're not voting for me, get out and vote. I don't want to represent something that the majority of people in Lynn Haven don't want. I don't want to be that person. So get out and vote and make your voice heard, and it will count.
Sure. Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you very
I had
much
a
for
good
having
time.
me.
Yeah.